Topic 8. Security Management Models. Part 1. Introduction to Security Management Models. Information security models are standards that are used for reference or comparison and often serve as the stepping-off point for emulation and adoption. One way to select a methodology is to adapt or adopt an existing security management model or set of practices. Because each information security environment is unique, you may need to modify or adapt portions of several frameworks. What works well for one organization may not precisely fit another. The communities of interest accountable for the security of an organization's information assets must design a working security plan and then implement a management model to execute and maintain that plan. This may begin with the creation or validation of a security framework, followed by an information security blueprint that describes existing controls and identifies other necessary security controls. A framework or security model is the outline of the more thorough and organization-specific blueprint. These documents form the basis for the design, selection, and initial and ongoing implementation of all subsequent security controls, including policy, CETA, and technologies. To generate a usable security blueprint, most organizations draw on established security frameworks, models, and practices. Another way to create a blueprint is to look at the paths taken by other organizations. In this kind of benchmarking, you follow the recommended practices or industry standards. Access control models. Access controls regulate the admission of users into trusted areas of the organization, both the logical access to the information systems or the physical access to the organization's facilities. Access control is maintained by means of a collection of policies, programs to carry out these policies, and technologies that enforce policies. The general application of access control comprises 4 processes. First, obtaining the identity of the entity requesting access to a logical or physical area. This is identification. Second, confirming the identity of the entity seeking access to the logical or physical area. This is called authentication. Third, determining which accesses an authenticated entity can perform in that physical or logical area. This is authorization. And finally, documenting the activities of the authorized individual in systems. This is accountability. Access control is built on several key principles. The first is the principle of least privilege. This is the principle by which members of the organization can access the minimum amount of information for the minimum amount of time necessary to perform their required duties. Second is need to know. This limits a user's access to the specific information required to perform the currently assigned task, and not merely to the category of data required for a general work function. The third is separation of duties, a control requiring that significant tasks be split up in such a way that more than one individual is responsible for their completion. There are a number of categories of access control. Directives employ administrative controls such as policy and training designed to prescribe certain user behavior in the organization. Deterrent discourages or deters an incipient incident. Preventative helps an organization avoid an incident. Detective detects or identifies an incident or threat when it occurs. Corrective remedies a circumstance or mitigates damage done during an incident. Recovery restores operating conditions back to normal. And compensating, which resolves shortcomings. This slide shows categories of access controls that may be relevant to management, operational, and technical staff. NIST categorizes controls according to management, operational, or technical. Management controls cover security processes that are designed by strategic planners, integrated into the organization's management practices, and routinely used by security administrators to design, implement, and monitor other control systems. Operational controls deal with the operational functions of security that have been integrated into the repeatable processes of the organization. Technical controls support the tactical portion of a security program and have been implemented as a reactive mechanism to deal with immediate needs of the organization as it responds to the realities of the technical environment. A mandatory access control is required and is structured and coordinated within a data classification scheme that rates each collection of information as well as each user. These ratings are often referred to as sensitivity or classification levels. When MACs are implemented, users and data owners have limited control over access to information resources. Data owners must classify the information assets for which they are responsible and review the classifications periodically. The U.S. military classification scheme relies on a more complex four-level classification scheme as defined in Executive Order 13526. There are three levels of classified data: top secret, secret, and confidential, and then there is unclassified data. For other organizations, a simple scheme might be to classify data as public for official or internal use only, and confidential or sensitive. In a security clearance structure, each user of an information asset is assigned an authorization level that indicates the highest level of information classification they may access. Most organizations have developed roles and corresponding security clearances, so individuals are assigned into authorization levels correlating with the classifications of the information assets. In the need-to-know principle, regardless of one's security clearance, an individual is not allowed to view data simply because it falls within that individual's level of clearance. Managing an information asset includes all aspects of its life cycle, from specification to design, acquisition, implementation, use, storage, distribution, backup, recovery, retirement, and eventually destruction. An information asset that has classification designation other than unclassified or public must be clearly marked as such, with a cover page and appropriate headers and footers. To maintain the confidentiality of classified documents, managers can implement a clean desk policy, requiring employees to secure all information in an appropriate storage container at the end of each business day. When copies of classified information are no longer valuable, or too many copies exist, care should be taken to destroy them properly to discourage dumpster diving. While bins stored on private property can be protected from trespassers, in 1998, the Supreme Court ruled that there is no expectation of privacy for items thrown away in trash or refuse containers. A variation on the MAC form of access control, Lattice-Based access controls, assigns users a matrix of authorizations for particular areas of access. The level of authorization may vary depending on the classification authorizations that individuals possess for each group of information assets or resources. The lattice structure contains subjects and objects, and the boundaries associated with each subject-object pair are clearly demarcated. Non-discretionary controls are determined by a central authority of the organization and can be based on roles, called role-based access controls, or on a specific set of tasks called task-based controls. Role-based controls are tied to the role that a particular user performs in an organization, whereas task-based controls are tied to a particular assignment or responsibility. Discretionary access controls are implemented at the discretion or option of the data user. Users can allow general, unrestricted access, or they can allow specific individuals or sets of individuals to access these resources. Most personal computer operating systems are designed based on the DAC model. One discretionary model is rule-based access controls, where access is granted based on a set of rules specified by the central authority. Content-dependent access controls provide access to a specific set of information depending on its content. For example, accounting information for the accounting department. A constrained user interface is designed specifically to restrict what information an individual can access. An example is an automated teller machine. Temporal or time-based isolation is when access to information is limited by a time of day constraint, for example, a time release safe.